This morning, folks, I am at Hillsbourgh Forest Park. It's an amazing sunrise. The actual lake beside me here is frozen, solid, and the reflection in the sunrise off the lake is just absolutely beautiful. I have a tripod set in the background. I would set quite low to the ground, trying to get the reflections and the broken ice and stuff in this. And the idea of today's video is I'm going to basically take you around Hillsbourgh Forest Park. I'm going to do a few photos, certain photos I have in mind, the forest and stuff on the other side. And I'm going to show you the setup, show you the settings on the camera, and then I'm going to go home, put the raw files in Lightroom, and I'm actually going to record my whole editing process as well. So I'm really going to take you right from the conception at the start, the taking the shot, right through to producing the final image. So hopefully it all works out, but this is why we do it. I mean, it's just gorgeous this morning. Okay, so what I've actually done here is I've got the tripod really low. I'm actually right on the edge of the lake. The colour is just getting better and better every second. The light's changing so fast. So I'm shooting now at f13, 1.3 seconds, and ISO 100. I've got it nice and low because actually the contrast of all the broken ice and the lights hitting it and really bringing up the clarity of it. So I think it's going to be a really good shot. It's just a stunning morning. I'm going to move on now. I'm going to walk around to the forest side. I can't actually believe how cold it is still. For that lake to freeze, it just shows you what the temperatures have been like lately. So I'm going to walk right around the far side of the lake. I'm going to do some shots in the forest. I'll see that tonight. And I've got a good idea. I know how I want to edit those as well. It's kind of muted type green look I'm going for. So I'm going to take random shots as I walk here until we get to the other side. Then I'm going to set up a tripod shot, and hopefully I'm going to put myself in the middle of the frame, in the middle of the forest. So should turn out pretty cool, but hell of a morning to be out. So this is going to be a setting for my next shot. This was a shot I actually planned this morning. So basically what I'm going to do is going to shoot with a more of a tele lens, compress all this background, and hopefully I'm going to go and stand in the middle with one of the cameras in my hand, and I'm going to center the frame and get the shot. We're going to use tele lens because, as you can see in a wide lens, yes, you get a lovely wide epic view, but the trees seem very far away, and they're actually not that far away from me. So if we use a tele lens, this background will actually get compressed, so it'll actually feel like it's pulled towards the foreground more, and you'll see that in the image. So I'm going to get set up here, go set up a tripod, camera on timer, use the remote on my phone, and hopefully get a good shot. What we'll say is if you're going to try and put yourself in the frame like this, number one, it can add interest massively. You've got an actual subject in the middle of the frame, and most cameras nowadays, you've got an app with your phone. So you basically connect your camera to the app, set everything up, set your exposure and everything. You can do it from the app as well, but I like to set my exposure for the scene. Then I walk into it, see where I am in the frame, hit the focus on the phone, and then take a few shots. Okay, what I'm doing now is I'm actually just putting on the 85mm lens. I'm hoping I have enough room to use it, because obviously with being a tele lens, I'm going to get a lot more compression. The longer the focal length I can use, the better. But I also want that 1.8 aperture to create like a narrow depth of field in the image, so hopefully it works out that way. So I'll just frame it up here what way I want it. So set the camera on timer. Framed up how I want the shot. I know roughly where I have to go and stand. Now, just need to pair my phone now to the app. Okay, so that's that done. Pretty sure it turned out pretty well. And actually the app, that's the first time I've used the app in this sort of situation. And it worked really, really well. You basically got a live view on your phone. You can touch the focus on your phone screen, put your phone in your pocket, and it takes a shot. I think you can do it all from the app, but I set the exposure in camera, set the timer in camera. So then any shutter shake, anything like that is all done away with, and also gives me a small amount of time just to get the phone put out of shot. Just get it put away, put down inside your body, into your pocket. Just makes more and more static shot. It's wee details like that that'll make or break a shot. You know, if I had a mobile phone hanging in my hand in the middle of this scene, it just wouldn't look great. You know what I mean? So fingers crossed, turns out okay. Alright, I already know how I'm going to edit. I want to like mute all the greens and stuff and make it really, really moody looking. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to walk back to the car around the lake and take a few more shots, and then we'll go home and start editing. So that's me almost back to the car here. What I've really been doing is walking about, just walking around the back of the lake. Anything that catches my eye, taking a wee shot of it. There's so much here to photograph. I said what you don't want to do is concentrate on just the big wide scenes. I mean, you could just shoot this big forest, nice big wide scene, same with the lake. Concentrate on the details as well. You want to really build it like, what I always think about is I always think about a series of shots, almost like an album, or if I was putting together a photo book, what would I want to see in it? So that's really what you want to do. You want to put it together like a photo book, think of every image that you're taking, think about how they're going to look together, and then build basically a story. And hopefully that's what I've done this morning. So when I get back, as I said, we're going to go through the editing process. I'm actually going to edit the image, colour grade and things like that, show you what to do with it, and then hopefully you'll learn something maybe. So see you back at the computer. So we're back at the computer, folks, and I've got the raw files loaded in here. I'm just going to run through a few of them. I basically run through the Lightroom panel as it stands. So I start at the top and I'm working my way down. I set my basic exposure where I want it to be, just the highlights and the shadows, etc. that most of us do. You know, I'm trying to open up the shadows here and then bring the highlights down just to give them a relatively flat sort of base image, and then I work on down through from there. Texture, always add a wee bit of texture, especially in landscape shots. When it gets on to the colour, I tend to boost vibrance up, because vibrance won't affect skin tones as much, so I tend to play with a vibrance slider, and there's no skin tones in this image, but I tend to put saturation. Saturation can be very overpowering if you turn it up, so I tend to turn saturation down slightly and then play with the vibrance slider up and down to get the colour I want. Normally on a tone curve in an image like this, I just do a standard S curve. If you don't know what that is, there's lots of information on YouTube, but a standard S curve is basically bringing down your shadow slightly and bringing up your highlights the slightest wee bit, and it just gives a wee bit of punch and contrast to the image. You can do so much in a tone curve. Also, I'll show you in the images after this, because I like to, when I'm doing forest stuff, I like to get them quite muted and faded, and it's all done like largely in the tone curve. HSL slider, when it comes to landscape stuff and any photo, this is like one of the most powerful tools. This is where you're really going to change the colours of the photo. As you can see here, you just move one slightest bit either way, and you're going to completely change what type of oranges you have. So by and large, if there's obviously orange or red in the image, that's those sliders, but skin is normally the orange and red slider. Anything green in colour will actually be yellow and green sliders. There's actually quite a lot of yellow in it, so that'll affect that area. And then your aquas and blues and stuff is obviously sky and things got in clothing, but you really need to play about with these. So there's hue, which is the type of colour it is. So your oranges will either be really red or orangey or yellow in colour, and that's completely subjective. It's completely what you want to do. The best thing to do is move them about and play with them and see where it takes you, because you might find you really like a certain look, or you might like your skies more like a turquoise colour or things like that, which means you play with the blue slider and the aqua slider, and that's how you're going to build up images that you really like. And then when you get something you really like your skies look a certain way, save it as a preset. So you go up to your left hand side here where your preset column is, and you click on the wee plus symbol, and you literally create your own preset, name it, and that'll be those settings saved. And it's so handy if you have a certain look that you want, and once you achieve it, if you save it, you can copy and paste it through photos. As I'll show you later on, that's how I'm going to edit a lot of the other photos from Hillsbourgh. So we'll just follow through here. Sharpening, I tend to do about sort of 65 to 70 in the sharpening, but then I mask it quite a bit. So if you hold the Alt key and then move your slider, it'll show you in white the areas that are going to be sharpened. These are the areas that's going to have obviously extra sharpen on them, but you don't want the whole image sharp, because then it's going to look really digital and really fake. You just want to do certain areas to give it that sharp look. Same with doing portraits and things like that. I will hold that Alt key down and move it just so I get like texture in the eyes and lips and things like that. Lens calibration, I always click those boxes. And down into color calibration, camera calibration. So again, this is playing with the colors slightly. Move the sliders about, see what they get you. I don't do a lot in here. You know, sometimes take the reds more like an orangey type hue, and then sometimes desaturate them slightly. You see what a difference it makes there, just moving that slider. So again, move them about until you see what can be achieved. Yes, if you go one way, it's going to look too much, but then you just take it back. It's a brilliant way to learn actually what these sliders do and how they can change and completely change your image. So just work through it and see where you go from there. You can see here now, this is up in the split toning section. I want to give the image a really warm pinkish red look. So if you go to the shadow wheel, you can literally set your shadows to have a red hue to them. Then you go to your highlight wheel, you can do exactly the same with it. You can actually set all the highlights to be a really red glow, really warm glow. You can see there how it completely changed the image. It gives that whole foreground there on top of the lake a real warm, strong glow. It really looks like just an amazing sunset, which it was. That's the way I wanted to look, the way I seen it that morning. The little sliders under each of these, is like a luminance slider for this. You can see there as I pushed it up, it really made the shadows look quite faded and bright. So again, it's playing about these sliders. Put them to where you think the image looks best. The only other thing I would do in this image, I think, before we finish it off, is just that bottom left corner is a little dark. I mean, I still want different gradients of darkness in it, because I mean the sun is coming from the right here and I want it sort of fading off across the image, but I'm just going to put a mask on. So I'm drawing in a gradient mask, and I'm just going to boost that corner the slightest wee bit. Sometimes less is more. It doesn't take a lot. You know, sometimes people put masks on to boost things way over the top. You don't need that much. So on to our next image here. There were more done these images with the greens and stuff. You can see there, that real saturated greeny sort of look. I don't particularly like that. Well, not at the minute, I don't anyway. You tend to go through phases with editing. So I tend to desaturate things like that, but we'll get on that in the HSL slider. So again, straight off the bat, I'm just going to set my exposure, correct it. Take a wee bit of contrast out. I sort of want to start up here to get as much detail, highlights, shadows, things like that, and start with a relatively flat sort of image. And then I'll work through the rest of the panel and we'll take it from there. And again, as I said before, I tend to boost the vibrance slightly and turn the saturation down a little bit. It's just how I like to work on it. Tone curve in this one, again, we're going to set a few points across tone curve, and what we're going to do is bring down the shadow area slightly, raise the highlights ever so slightly, and then I want to create sort of like a faded, muted type look. So when we come to doing that, you'll see what I do here on the very bottom point of the line and the black point. So that's our shadows there in that area. We're just going to bring that down the slightest bit. So don't be afraid on these things, guys, of going too much. Make a mistake. If you do make a mistake, double click on the point you made and it'll bring it back to where you were. But really there is no mistakes to be made. It's all learning. The more you adjust things, the more you move things, the more you play with these tools, you start to understand how they affect the photo, and then when you realise what certain look you want, you'll start to understand how to use the tools to achieve that look, rather than just guessing and moving things and saving it up. As you do that and learn more about what each thing does, you will start to recognise, oh, I want to look like this faded, muted, matte look, and you'll know how to achieve that. So what I'm doing here is I'm actually just lifting the black point. As you can see here, all the areas that would have been very dark and black in the image, they're almost like, well, that's turned like a greyish colour now, and it gives that sort of matte, muted look across the image, and it's what I want. Because in the next scene, this was the scene I was setting up, but in the next image, I'm going to be in the middle of the image, I'm going to be in the middle of the frame, in a red hat, my coat, my camera bag, and I want sort of me as the centre of the frame, as the focal point to stand out. And I want this to be like almost like a muted painted look behind me, and hopefully we'll be able to achieve that. But what I'm doing in this image is basically I'm setting up the scene how I want it, and when I come to doing this exact colour grade, exact edit on the next image with me in it, I'll just be able to copy and paste the settings and it should work okay. Now what I am doing here, there's not a lot of reds and oranges in this image, but as I said, the next image I plan to copy and paste these settings across. I know that I'm in the image, so I'm just adjusting the reds and oranges slightly for my skin tone. I tend to push the reds slightly more towards the orange, and I push the oranges slightly towards orange as well. I don't want yellowy skin. And then, as you see, when I come into saturation, then we'll deal with it there as well. As far as the forest goes, the greens, I tend to turn the hues, the yellows to a warmer tone, and the greens to sort of more yellowish tone, and that gives the look we've achieved now. Then we're on the saturation side of it. Reds, oranges, I tend to desaturate slightly, because again that's going to affect my skin tone. So I'm going to bring that down slightly, and then the greens and the yellows I'm going to desaturate as well, and that's going to further give this sort of muted, faded look in the image, as you can see there in front of us. Just as I take those down, see the whole image changed, the whole look of it. It's got that looks almost like a painted look. That's exactly what I'm going for. And I said, because I have used these tools a lot, I knew that this was, when I photographed this scene, I knew in my head this is how I wanted to edit, and I know how to use the tools to achieve that. That's really what the end goal is here, is to learn to use Lightroom to actually achieve the photo you envision, not just hoping for the best and moving sliders about and hope it works. It's actually thinking of how you want to edit a photo, knowing the look you want, and knowing how to use these tools. So again, in the luminance panel, this is how bright the colours are. You'll notice are straight off the bat, there's not much effect in this image, but reds and oranges, I illuminate them slightly more, because you want nice bright skin tones. You're going to see that in the next image with me on it. And again, the greens and yellows, I tend to take them down slightly, for again to help with that muted look. Purples, magentas, there's not really a lot in here with that. As we're going down, you can do, again, you can put a certain hue, a certain colour into your shadows or your highlights or your midtones. In this image, you can see the midtones, so that's going to be obviously the middle greys in the image. I'm setting them out more of like an orange tone, red tone. You can see how that changes it to almost give it like a brownish look. And then once you get where it is set, you just click on it again, it'll draw a straight line on the colour wheel, and you can bring it back to basically reduce the intensity of it. Again, very little. It's small changes make a huge difference in things, I guess. You can imagine when this image started and where we're at now, it's quite significant. It really looks like a totally different photograph. It looks like the photograph I wanted to take. It's the image it's the exact way I had it in my head, like a painted matte look. So again, into our sharpening, standard in about 70, and then you'll see again, hold the Alt key down, start moving that masking slider till we see just the edges we want sharpened. So give or take, normally in around 50% of the image sharp for something like this is absolutely fine. If it was a portrait, I might even mask it off a lot more, just purely just to highlight the eyes and things. You want, when you're doing portraits, you don't want really sharp skin texture and things like that, because most people don't want to see every imperfection. So you want to soften skin, things like that, and you can mask off all that sharpening and make the portrait look much more pleasing. Again, just running through, and the colour calibration, things like that, just running through these tools, changing colours slightly, manipulating the image to exactly where I want it. That's why you get a drink of coffee there. See the extreme difference that made just by moving that blue slider in the color calibration. It really affects the image. So a small amount of movement can really change the look of it. Add a slight bit of color temperature here. Warm up the image slightly. So that's that image done. So that's basically one of my presets. That's exactly the settings I really put in. So again, you can see that black point. If you raise the black point more, you get a more faded image. If you bring the black point down slightly, the slider under the shadow color wheel for the split tone, if can move it up to have a lighter area. You'll fade the image. You can see there where it's looking more and more matte with all these settings getting applied. Obviously that's an extreme version, but again, move the slider, see what it does, and then move it back to where you think looks good. This is how you learn how to use these tools. At that point I have literally copied and pasted. So I copied all those settings I've just made. And this is how I try and keep things cohesive if I'm doing a set of photos. So I saved those settings. Every single photo from this point forward, I will paste those settings on and then make adjustments to exposure, etc. to make the image look the way I want. It's not going to be an exact science. You're not going to paste this on every photo and they're going to look absolutely amazing. So this is what the photo did look like. Again, very vibrant greens. I really don't like real bright greens in the image. Every other colour's fine, it's just greens. I don't like the way they look really bright like that. And that's the settings pasted on. I mean, again, it's subjective, but I think this image looks so much more artistic. It's so much more like almost cinematic. It completely changes the photograph. Again, just checking sharpness or etc. It's the only time I'll ever really zoom in an image. It's just to check it's in focus, sharp, and then back out again. That's normally where I work from. Again, you can see there the fact it has in the skin, the luminance slider. If you pull the orange slider out, pull the red slider up, you can see there's the cheeks and the skin tone brightening. Never mind the hat so much, look at the skin. This is the area we're trying to preserve. I actually have, it's mostly, the way I'm really editing this at the minute with a muted green look, I have a lot of these saved as presets, which I am going to make available on Etsy or something like that, or preset pack. So I'm going to have black and white presets, I'm going to have the color presets, I'm going to have sort of muted presets. So those will be available as well. Not yet, eventually. I am just still really perfecting them before I ever try and sell them to anybody. So again, next image here, just a basic image, the tree hanging over the lake, nice and sharp, all looks good. Again, the greens thing, I want it to be a consistent look, so paste the settings on from the previous image. You can see there now we're getting more like the other ones, that sort of faded, muted look. Again, it's not perfect. There's going to have to be small tweaks made, but any preset, so all you're really doing here is copy and paste the settings. You're just using a preset, but any preset that you use, any preset that you buy, it's going to be a base for you to start from. When you apply a preset to an image, you're still going to have to adjust exposure, add more texture, do simple tweaks to make the image your own. You're going to get all the same type of greens on it, you're going to get the same type of reds, so it's going to be cohesive, it's going to be a consistent look. But depending on how the image was shot, depending on the amount of light, depending on the white balance of the camera, things are going to look different from image to image, even though you're pasting the same settings. This again, you have to know what tools to use to correct it and get it to look like all the other photos. Presets are very, very good, but you need to understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. Because just applying a preset will never just be a one and done image. You're going to have to work on it more afterwards. I think I'll really call it quits there, folks. Hope you've enjoyed this video. I've put quite a bit of work into this one. and hope to do more of it. But yeah, if you've enjoyed it, like, subscribe, drop a comment, ask me anything you want, anything you want to see, anything you want tutorials on. If you want tutorials in studio work and more flash work, anything at all, drop a comment, let me know, and I will try and do more of it. So that's us for now. Thanks for watching.